Hello everyone. Today we have William with us. He's from Australia, Melbourne, and he is a badminton coach and he specializes in teaching badminton to kids. So, William, can you tell a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, cool. So, thank you for having me here, first of all. Our first kind of training started 4 years ago. So, we've been coaching kids in Melbourne, Australia for 4 years. We're probably a relatively new club compared to other people. And as you can probably see, I'm quite young, but we have a kind of more classroom teaching style for kids. So, we're trying to bring badminton to more students so that it's more accessible and so that everyone can kind of get a good try at badminton, even if they're not that sporty or they're not that into sports.
Oh my, that's great. And why did you focus on kids singles? And how did your first session look like?
Yeah, so well, actually, at the start when we started, we didn't really know what was going on. So it was a lot of like exploration, trying out what we think works. But I think a lot of our training comes from like kind of principles that we have about coaching. So my parents are teachers, and my sister also studied teaching. So basically, they gave me a lot of ideas about how we can make coaching more classroom-like. So a good example would be, for example, like at the start when we started coaching, and also a lot of clubs in Melbourne, they kind of just do whatever they want to do every single class. They help kids by just looking at them, finding problems, and then solving them. But there's no like formal system that they use for teaching kids. And even more international systems like Badminton Australia, Badminton World Federation, a lot of their coaching systems are targeted towards kids that are a bit more sporty or more adults. So they give you systems for learning, but they don't make it very accessible for students that are a bit weaker physically. So that's how I kind of got into it because I thought this would be a good way to get more people into badminton. And in my own experience, badminton was something that helped me get into sport because I was never a very sporty kid growing up.
Okay. And what do you think? Who typically walks into your program? Like what age range and what are their goals and
Yeah, so we have
what are the
students
most
from
common early hurdles?
yeah, those are good questions. So we have kids from 6 to 18. And then most of them generally find it hard to do sports. So they might have tried basketball, thought it was too physical, might have tried tennis, thought it was too tiring, might have tried soccer, thought it was also too physical, just stuff like that. And then they probably, the very typical one that they also do is they do swimming. So badminton and swimming, both kind of technical sports, both not very interactive in terms of with the opponent. So you wouldn't touch or hit them or anything like that. So more like they like working on their own thing and they like improving slowly. And then the way we do training as well is we try to not push them too much. So yes, we push them, but we push them to be better sportsmen instead of necessarily better players straight away. So it's like a step building process. And we teach them a lot of physical skills, so like balancing, jumping, running, like hand-eye coordination, things like that. So actually, one of our first hurdles would be things like that, where students would come in, would try to teach them a stroke, and then they wouldn't be able to do the stroke because they just had lack hand-eye coordination because they haven't played many other sports.
Okay. And like your reels feel like friendly mini lessons. So how did you
Yes,
develop
exactly.
that one or two cues only style for kids?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. And thank you for noticing that. It's actually something we really focus on that because for our kids, we've noticed that if you tell them more than one or two things, they really can't take it in. So maybe for somebody who's very like sporty, who's very talented, and who understands like how to change their physical attributes very easily, they can learn five things in one set of feeding. So in badminton, we do feeding, so we hit the shuttles to the student, and then they hit the shuttles back, and then throughout the process, we correct them. Maybe throughout one set, a very sporty kid can change two or three things, but then for somebody who's not super sporty, you only tell them one thing, they change it over two or three sets. So they have to adapt slower, and they need more practice. So that's why with our videos as well, when they're at home, they don't have a lot of feedback from a coach. They need to be able to self-correct. So we only give them one or two things so that they can, correct those two things very well. Because everyone says like you should do one thing or two things well instead of doing a lot of things very badly.
Yeah. And what's unique about coaching juniors in your Melbourne community? Any advantages or constraints that shaped your program?
That's a good question as well. I think for Melbourne, there's not a very well developed training process. So I think countries like maybe more Asian countries like China, like Malaysia, like India would probably have very well developed and saturated markets. But in Australia, the kids coaching scene is kind of neglected. So there are a couple kids that are quite good. They get special treatment and then they get a lot of attention during classes, as you would see elsewhere as well. But a kids be like friendly and more beginner style training is not very common, especially ones that focus on helping kids that are a bit weaker, like kind of catch up, or people like developing interest in badminton instead of trying to create necessarily super great players.
Yeah. And if a 9 to 12-year-old wants to compete in singles, what three foundation footwork drill do you teach them, and what exact coaching cue do you insist on?
Yeah, sorry, was the second part of that question?
Uh, what's the three foot foundation footwork drill do you teach them
Yeah,
first, and what
yeah.
exact coaching cue do you insist on?
Okay, that's a really specific question. So for the footwork, I would say that beginners, we do them in three steps. So like a kid beginner comes, I would start with front and back, side to side. This is very standard.
Mm.
So the student will pick up shuttles on one side of the tram tracks and then place it on the other side. You can probably add some sort of visual if you want to. And then the front and back, you can pick up a shuttle from the front service line and then skip backwards doing footwork and then do a throw. At the start, it's more about teaching them movement patterns rather than specific badminton footwork. So a very common one that they wouldn't know how to do is side skips. A lot of people cross their legs when they do side skips. So when they skip, I would say skip back, skip back, skip back. And then when they come forward, make sure they lunge, lunge, lunge. So those two movement patterns are very, very important for badminton. And honestly, at higher levels of badminton, when they start playing competition, especially for kids, because they're like shorter, they don't have standard footwork. Kids vary in height
Mm.
and like size based off their age, especially from 9 to 12, where like for example, girls would be going through puberty, so they would be a bit taller than guys. So
Mm.
they would have like kind of different styles of footwork, and then some people take more steps, some people take less. But as long as they understand they need to be skipping backwards and then they need to be lunging when they go forwards, like on the last step, that's a very good start. So basic movement patterns, and then the second drill will probably do diagonal movement. So the exact same footwork, side to side, front and back, but they're moving in a V shape. So they're going to the middle after each one, just so they get used to moving to the middle. That's the thing I would prompt them a lot. And then the last one would be six corners. So two front corners, two side corners, two back corners, and then they move to all of them.
Okay. And kids often struggle with the front court lunges. So, what progressive lunges recovery sequence do you use to make them faster and protect the knees?
So I think the basic stuff you would say for front court lunges, I have a video on this on my Instagram as well, would just be make sure you lunge with your knees behind your feet. Make sure you land heel first. Make sure your lunge is big enough so that you never lean over your front foot. The most common mistake where people injure their knees is when they lunge and then their back foot lifts because their weight is too far forward. And then they lean over their foot to reach a shuttle and then they hurt their knee. But if their front foot becomes a bigger lunge, then they'll be in like balance. So it's more
And
just like developing the feeling of a good lunge. So being stable, sinking into your legs, making sure that you're not overbalanced in terms of like leaning too far in front, and then having like the correct feet placement. So not too close, not too far, making sure your heel goes first, and then the feet in front of the knee.
how do you get to know that they're ready to progress, like visually noticing them?
Well, when we correct students, our general criteria is we just look at the thing that they're doing, and then pick out one or two specific key areas they need to work on and then just look for that area. So very specifically, we would always say something like make sure you land heel first and then go onto your toe instead of saying make sure to lunge bigger. Because lunging bigger is something that is kind of subjective for them. It's hard for us to kind of check on that. But when we say go heel first, then toe, it forces them to actually take a bigger step because it's very hard to, I guess, step too short when you go heel to toe because your heel is a lot closer to you. So you'll feel like naturally you want to take a bigger step. And then as we correct that thing, like heel to toe, they will naturally start lunging bigger. So I guess when we progress them is when we notice that all these little things that we check for are all there. Then we know that most of the time they'll be lunging correctly.
Okay. And
Yeah.
like teaching someone and if you are teaching some lessons to kids, so teaching and them actually doing what the drills you are suggesting them, there's a lot of difference in that. So what do you add, like random feeds, call outs, and multi shuttle to create recovery realistic footwork for singles?
Right. So for the realistic part, it's actually there's a very good model in the Badminton World Federation handbook that we follow, which is that when you teach badminton skills and kind of skills in all areas, you want to start with the skill itself. So, for example, learning footwork, knowing exactly what steps to take, build that up step by step in a very stable environment. So the environment could be like no shuttle, just the coach calling, and then no timer as well. And then as we slowly make the drill more difficult, make it more game-like, basically we're trying to make the environment more random, more difficult, and faster. So first we would introduce timers to the footwork drills. So still the same steps, but with a timer. And then we would introduce something like pointing. So with the six corners, we don't use shuttles anymore. Or towards later on, we don't use shuttles anymore. We get coach to point them. Then the coach can simulate a game environment. So for example, if you go to the backcourt, if I don't know, if they hit the shot a little bit late or move slower, then we would point front court because most likely they did a drop and then the opponent's going to net to them. So we just make the situation more game-like based off of the coach's experience. And then
Mhm.
with the
Yeah.
feeding, we start with more predictable feeding, and then we increase speed, and then we increase like options. So instead of just two front corners, we might include the side corners, and then we eventually add into random shots as well. Hopefully that makes sense.
Okay. And how do you convert a technical cue like earlier racket prep on drops into tactical gains kids can feel in matches?
I would say that that question is a little bit misleading because most of the time we would actually teach them very separately. So you would go for form stuff first, and then you would go for tactical things. So when I teach a student tactical things like when to use a drop or how early you
Mhm.
should get to the shuttle for a drop, they should already be very comfortable adjusting between early and late drops. So their form shouldn't really be an issue at that point. They should be able to adjust their drop based off the shuttle, but they just need to know in certain situations they get to the shuttle early. So I would teach them kind of separately, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And when parents send you a weekend match, what's your 30-minute review recipe for kids? Three moments to watch and a drill to assign for each.
So what was this? Is this after a match?
When parents send a weekend match, like if there's a match for kids, uh, so what's
Yeah.
the 30-minute review you give to kids, like three moments to watch while they're playing the game and a drill to assign for each player?
Okay, so once again, I think the system that we use is a little bit different from what you're assuming. With the drills, we usually have drills during training. So usually, like after if they play a match, for example, they would come back, and then during the next training session, you have to talk to them. But we would tailor that training session around what they did during the match. So maybe like footwork, for example, we would tell them we'll watch tape of their matches and then we'll tell them like, okay, make sure you watch your front court and things like that. But I tend to be more focused on the tactic stuff when we watch game tape. So more interested in, okay, why did you make this decision to do this shot? And then their overall footwork and things like that would be improved in class. And my reasoning for that is because for kids, a lot of the time they have big footwork issues, like big footwork, like racket issues, especially for our demographic where they're a bit like weaker. So the match thing is more like for them to practice on their own, for them to understand how a game should feel like. And then the technical stuff during a match, like if they miss three net shots, we'd work on that separately.
Okay. And many families chase power first. So what do you prioritize instead of U13, U15 singles, and which drill proves your point fastest?
Sorry, say that again.
Uh, what do you prioritize instead of U13 or U15 singles?
Right. Okay. So for us, I think we tend to focus less on, first of all, less on competition in general. So a lot of our kids just there to have a good time, make sure they enjoy badminton, and then make sure that it's a sport they can kind of play all throughout their life. So a lot of them aren't very competitive, but if they are trying to be competitive, I would say that a good place to peak would be around 17 to 19, because that's when you are playing like closer to your physical potential. So there's also a very good segment on the BWF, um, like kids training section, where kids at that age, from 13 to 15, are very underdeveloped. So some kids who develop more will just be better because they are stronger. So it's not really a skill thing. And also footwork wise, we'd
Mm.
be less strict on them because they tend to have different footwork when they're 13 compared to when they're, I don't know, 18, for example, just because of their size and then their power as well. Like the clearing footwork would be very different for a 13-year-old trying to get a full court clear compared to an adult who can just use more of their arms. This is especially for guys, right? So for peaking, or in terms of like technical peak when they should be completely fine with their technique. We don't need to talk about it almost ever again. Would probably be around 17 to 19 because they don't need to change anything because of their body. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
if you could redesign a club's junior pathway, what three development checkpoints would you lock in by age 14 for singles?
At age 14,
Yeah.
I think that question really depends on when they start playing and
Yeah.
when
Mhm.
we want them to start competing. So I'll just choose a random number. Like say they start at age 9. I would say that by age 11, depending on the kid, this is very, very dependent on how technically talented they are and things like that. By age 11, so after 2 years of training, they should have all the strokes down, and then they should be able to start playing drills. And then, honestly, once they start learning all the technical strokes, the only time we would start changing again would when they get older. So as long as they keep playing during that process and they slowly correct, it really depends on when they go through that body change of puberty. So I would say that for the first 2 years, the goal is to change all form, like footwork, form, strokes. And then afterwards, it's more drilling and practice. So I wouldn't say that the age is necessarily as important as how long they've been playing for.
Okay.
Yeah.
And like short form videos work, but kids' attention needs like a practical demo when they start playing. If they just keep seeing the videos, like if they're new to the badminton field, if they keep seeing the videos, it's not a practical experience. So, how will you
Sure.
use technology like Reels or tagging apps without losing the depths? So do you start
Right.
with showing them the
Well,
videos or just
our
direct?
reels are actually not very much for the kids that we coach. So the reels are to show parents that we know what we're talking about. And it's actually more of a tool for adults. So adults can follow things from reels a lot easier than kids can. So, like, a kid will watch a reel and not really be able to take away a lot. They need demonstration, they need practical, they need immediate feedback. So, you throw a shuttle, you tell them what to fix as you throw the shuttle. And then the moment they hit the shuttle, you tell them good job or not good job. Right?
Okay.
You say good job or nice try. But
Mhm.
for the reels, we don't really ever show the reels to kids unless for fun.
Yeah.
We usually show it to their parents to show the parents what we teach their kids, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
what that kids are going to be learning and how much they are
Learning, yeah.
going to like work out.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh, and could you give our listeners a 7-day mini plan for junior, two footwork drill, one timing drill, and a simple match review checklist?
I feel like that would be really hard to do if you base it on different students though. So
Like two
I would
footwork
say like,
drill.
but it really depends on their skill level. So
Okay.
all of our training is very specific to their levels. So actually, I would say the first recommendation is work out what level you're at, and then based off that, you can find content for your level. So a student who doesn't like it's very, very hard to give specific advice to a student or any student, especially if I don't know even remotely what level they're at. So I think your suggestion to review two footwork, one timing or like stroke based drill is a good suggestion. But to give specific advice, I don't think I'm comfortable doing that because I don't know how good the kids are that I'm watching.
Yeah, it depends on means their skills also and how
Yeah.
fast they learn. Yeah.
Yes.
And I think we are almost done with the questions. So to our
Yeah.
viewers, I think they will like to connect with you on social media. So where should
Yeah.
the parents or young players connect with you, like Instagram or
Yeah, you
class
guys can find us
YouTube?
on Instagram for Go Badminton 2021. On Facebook, the same tag, which you guys will probably see down below in the video anyway. And then on YouTube is the same thing. So pretty much all platforms. And yeah, that's it.
Mm. Okay. And I'll be mentioning your links on Instagram and Facebook and everything in my post also. So I think we have everything covered for this interview. And I think we have got a lots of guidance and people who reach this video and get to know about everything related to the kids if they're starting new and parents who are looking to send their kids for badminton game. So I think
Yeah,
we have got a lots of guidance and thank you so much, William, for taking time for this interview.
perfect.
It
Thank you
was
so much.
really great connecting with you and hope to have more meetings with you and
Yeah,
more guidance. Uh,
perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.